To stay updated with the latest videos from Learnsignal, make sure you click on the bell icon.
So I want to talk now about some actual practical tips because, we can talk about the issues that people have found before, but these are tips which have been validated by the ACCA and by our own students and from discussions with that ACCA examining team. And the first one, which is really important for not only getting through the full syllabus, but maintaining your motivation, is having a plan in place. You need to plan what you're going to do with your time from now until the March exams to ensure that you not only get through the full syllabus, but also to make sure you're building in that application and practice as you go. And once you have a plan, you're much more likely to maintain your motivation from now until then, because it can be quite daunting when we look at a full sitting and we think of all we have to get done, and that puts added pressure on us and we're worried about how we're going to get through it all. When you actually break it down into what do I need to do over 7 weeks, what do I need to do on a weekly basis, and then within that week, what do I need to do in today's session to make sure I stay on top of my weekly plan, suddenly it becomes very manageable, because then you just have to focus on today. And if you keep doing the right thing in a given week, over 7 weeks up to the exams, you'll be in a really strong position. And at Learnsignal, we have a dedicated study plan that runs from this week right until the exams, even if you're just starting now, to make sure you get through all the material in the way that we know is best for preparing you for the exam. The second key point is about studying regularly, and this is something that the ACCA has done research on, and they talk about it in their examiner reports. They say it's clear the students who study over a longer period of time in regular intervals perform better than the ones who cram as it gets closer to the exam, or who do really long study sessions, so a single day in a week where they try to do 10 hours. And that should make sense to you, because it's very difficult to absorb all of that information in a short period of time. You're at your most efficient and effective studying if you can break it down into smaller chunks that you do regularly, because not only will you have more energy and motivation in those sessions, but you'll be able to absorb the knowledge better and the lessons you're picking up as you practice questions. So those two really go hand in hand. Make a plan from now into the exams, but within that plan, make sure it's set up so that you're studying regularly in smaller sessions. The next one is really key, because when we talked about students having to get through the full syllabus, that doesn't mean you have to get through the entire syllabus before you can start practicing questions. It's actually the opposite. You need to be practicing questions constantly as you're working through the syllabus so that you build that application skill. It's only after you've gone through a topic and then you do a question that you really test your understanding of that. And it's that understanding that will help you absorb the knowledge, but also how you start to learn how to apply it in an exam scenario. So make sure as you're studying, you're building practice questions alongside going through the materials. And as we said, if you have a plan in place and you follow the Learnsignal plan that has those practice questions built in alongside the materials, that will ensure you're getting the required practice in. The next one we talked a little bit before about replicating the exam experience. So about making sure that the actual day of the exam isn't the first time you've had that exam experience. And you may have had other sittings, but what you want to try do is, as much as possible, make your study feel like an exam scenario. So when you're practicing questions, use the CBE tool if that's what your exam's going to be on. When you're practicing questions, do it under the amount of time that you'd have in the exam to do that question, to build up that more pressured situation and to build those skills of time management. When you're going through them, don't look at solutions or notes. Treat it like an actual exam so that you get used to answering questions with the time available like you have in the exam. And then build in, so that not just for practice questions, build in that you do some full mock exam papers. So you get to experience what it's like to do a 3-hour exam on a CBE tool where you're planning and managing your time. And the more times you can replicate that experience before your actual exam, the better position you're going to be in when you get into the actual day. Because not only will you have time management skills, CBE skills, will you be used to approaching and planning questions without notes, but you'll also have seen a range of different scenarios And you'll also have had that experience of what order to go through a paper, what's the best strategy for you, how long it takes to write out answers. So the more you can do that, the better position you're going to be in the actual exam. Okay, so I can see some questions and comments coming in. As I said at the start, we will be getting to all these shortly. I just have 1 or 2 more slides of tips, and then we'll get into any questions. So just bear with us on that. And because we had to refresh the session, some of those questions may no longer be under the Ask a Question. So you might just type some questions in again in case they got in case they were missed from the slight outage we had there. Okay, the next point is all about listening to the examiner. And students often think, how am I supposed to listen to the examiner? I don't get to talk to them. But actually, the examiner releases lots of vital information throughout the sitting, which if you can go through and if you can absorb, you'll be in a really good position for understanding what they're looking for. So what I mean by this is each sitting, they release examiner reports, which will be coming out around this week on the recent exam sitting. They actually release them twice a year now. So there'll be one release now, which covers September and December. And within that, the examiner for each subject explicitly states what students did well, what students struggled with, what advice they'd have for future students. And it really creates a playbook of what you need to focus on to make sure you pass your exam. So you should be looking at and reading those recent examiner reports for the subject that you're preparing for. And when you go back and practice previous exam paper questions, you should look at the examiner reports related to those questions to help build your understanding. But on top of that, they also release technical articles. So if there's topics or subject areas that students struggle with, you'll find on the ACCA website and within the Learnsignal resources, lots of good examiner technical articles giving you tips for what you need to say. And finally, using an approved learning provider is essential. The ACCA have released resources saying that students who use an approved learning partner are 25% more likely to pass their exam. So just by being with a provider, you're increasing your chances. And that's because being with a provider like Learnsignal, we give you those plans. We make sure you study regularly. We build those practice questions in, and we give you those examiner tips, all which help you replicate that exam experience and give you the best chance of passing your exam.